Welcome to this Christmas Eve service for Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Northwest Tucson. We welcome you wherever you are, and whatever your identity, origin, or religious beliefs may be. We hope to offer you a respite from the hectic preparations and activities of recent days. And we also hope to offer you a shared experience in a loving community, especially for those of you who may not be able to spend the holidays with your loved ones. We encourage you to reflect on the true meaning of this holiday: peace and love and hope and joy.
This Christmas Eve, our chalice lighting words come from Agnes Farrow. What is Christmas? It is tenderness for the past, courage for the present, hope for the future. It is a fervent wish that every cup may overflow with blessings rich and eternal, and that every path may lead to peace.
The story for this Christmas evening is adapted by one written by Pearl S. Buck, entitled On Christmas Day in the Morning. The old man woke suddenly and completely. It was 4 a.m., the hour at which his father had always called him to get up and help with the milking. Strange how the habits of his youth clung to him still, 50 years ago, and his father dead for 30 years, and yet he still waked at 4 o'clock in the morning. Why did he feel so awake today? He slipped back in time, as he did so easily nowadays. He was 15 years old and still on his father's farm. He had not known the depth of his love for his father until a few days before Christmas, when he had overheard what his father was saying to his mother. "Mary, I hate to call Rob in the mornings. He's growing so fast and he needs his sleep. If you could see how he sleeps when I go in to wake him, I wish I could manage alone." "Well, you can't, Adam," his mother said briskly. "Besides, he isn't a child anymore. It's time he took his turn." "Yes," his father said slowly, "but I sure do hate to wake him." When he heard these words, something in him spoke. His father loved him. Neither his father nor his mother talked about loving their children. They had no time for such things. There was always so much to do on the farm. They were poor. And most of the excitement was in the turkey they had raised themselves and the mince pies his mother had made. His sisters sewed presents, and his mother and father always bought him not only something practical, such as a warm jacket, but something more, like a book. And he saved and bought them each a present too. He wished, that Christmas when he was 15, he wished he had a better present for his father. As usual, he had gone to the 10-cent store and bought a tie. It had seemed nice enough until he lay thinking that night before Christmas. The thought struck him like a silver dagger. Why should he not give his father a special gift too? He could get up early, earlier than 4 o'clock, and creep into the barn and get all the milking done. He'd do it alone, milk and clean up. And then when his father went in to start milking, he'd see that it had already been done. That was what he would do, so he mustn't sleep too soundly. He must have waked 20 times that night, midnight and 1:30 and then 2 o'clock. At 2:45 he got up and put on his clothes. He crept downstairs, careful of the squeaky boards, and let himself out. He had never milked alone before, but it seemed almost easy. He kept thinking about his father's surprise. His father would wake him, saying that he would get things started while Rob got dressed. He'd go to the barn, open the door, and then he'd go to get the 2 big empty milk cans. But they wouldn't be waiting or empty. They'd be standing in the milk house, filled. For once, milking was not a chore. It was something else, a gift to the father who loved him. Soon the 2 milk cans were full, and he covered them and closed the milk house door carefully. Back in his room, he had only a minute to pull off his clothes in the darkness and jump into bed, for he heard his father moving about. He put the covers over his head to silence his quick breathing. The door opened. "Rob," his father called, "we have to get up, son, even if it is Christmas." "All right," he said sleepily. The door closed, and he lay still, laughing to himself. In just a few minutes, his father would know. The minutes were endless, 10, 15, until he heard his father's footsteps again. "Rob!" "Yes, Dad?" "Thought you'd fool me, did you?" "It's for Christmas, Dad." He got up and clutched his father in a great big hug. He felt his father's arms go around him. "Son, I thank you. Nobody ever did a nicer thing. The best Christmas gift I ever had. And I'll remember it, son, every year on Christmas morning, so long as I live." Now that his father was gone, he remembered it alone. That blessed Christmas dawn when, alone with the cows in the barn, he had made his first gift of true love. Such a happy, happy Christmas.
The first Noel, the angels did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. They star. Three magi came from country far to seek a king, was their intent, and to follow the star wherever it went. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel.
Spirit of life and love, we know you by many names, or perhaps no name at all. Yet together we know this is a holy night. We come from many different traditions, or perhaps no tradition at all. We have celebrated decades of Christmases, or maybe this is only our first or second Christmas Eve service. Yet together we know this is a holy night. It's a holy night because we are here together, joined in our common humanity, listening to the words of the centuries, old stories and familiar carols, recognizing that these are our stories. We've been the frightened young couple whose lives are about to change forever through no intention of our own. We've known what it's like not to fit in, to be excluded, to be told there's no room at the inn for us. We too have been the shepherds who are stunned into silence by the awe of nature, fearful of what we are being asked to do next. We are the wayfarers on a journey that has an ending that we do not know. But we also know the promise of looking into the eyes of a newborn child. We recognize the divine within that new life, Emmanuel. God is with us. We have known the excitement and the adventure of a shared new journey. We know that we cannot make it through this life alone. We pray that we too will have visits from the wise ones, angels who would tell us not to be afraid, and those who bring us light in our darkest days to show us the way. We yearn for the promise of peace and everlasting love, and that the words of the carols may ring true. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. In the bleak midwinter, in this world of pain, may our hearts be open, may love be born again. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Joy to the world, joy to the earth, peace on earth, goodwill to all. Silent night, holy night, may all be calm, may all be bright. We know together it is indeed a holy night, and we are blessed to share it with each other. Amen.
Okay, Joy, I have to tell you a story because you're going to hear it a lot in your life. And you're a preacher's kid, so you have to hear my version first. So here it goes. There once was a family, kind of like ours, and they lived during a time of great suffering, kind of like our people do. And during that time of suffering, they were forced to migrate. But during their migration, one of the parents was pregnant, and it was unexpected but trusted, and so they continued on together. But the family does not make it to their destination. Instead, they have to find some kind of place that they can make a home so that they could give birth to their child. Now, sometimes suffering can do strange things. Suffering can numb you, making you unable to care for yourself or others. And sometimes suffering hardens you, making you unable to be tender for yourself or others. And sometimes it shakes you so that you're scared to show up for yourself or others. But in this story, there's something else that happens. When that baby arrives, all these people who had been suffering, all the animals who had been laboring, all the workers, and even the stars, and even the moon, and even some random traveling wise people all decide to stop and be tender and pay attention. Now, you think they'd be too tired to pay attention. I mean, after all that time being separated by their suffering, and they couldn't see an end to it, and they didn't know what they would do next. But still, all those beings knew that they had a stake in that child's life. And they had a stake in that child's joy. And they had a stake in that child's survival. So it is. Every year, we will stop with our community and we will remember this story. That there was once a time when there was suffering. And that in the midst of all that suffering, when people could have been hard or numb or scared or zoomed out, they decided to stop. And the heaven beings and the earth beings chose to pay attention to each other in the form of a little baby, because they had a stake in each other's survival and a stake in each other's joy. The end. I think it's time for you to go to bed. Love, would you be my holy family?
Oh, hello.
Bye, Joy.
Let's go.
What does it mean to really have a stake in each other's survival and to have a stake in each other's joy? In some social justice spaces, there is an idea that yes, it's good to take action because other people are suffering. And yes, it's good to notice another person's experience is different than your own and that they might be impacted by something, and that you should care to minimize and end suffering. But in the long run, doing things on behalf of someone else or because you think someone else has it worse than you might not really be our goal. Instead, if you know and believe that you have a personal stake in stopping something that harms people, because you take time to examine your own life and your own place in the causing of harm, then your investment is deeper, your actions more sustaining, and your relationship to people who are more impacted than you are more equitable. Beyond that, then, there is this invitation that perhaps I don't just have a personal stake in stopping something that causes harm. Perhaps, more than that, I have a personal stake in ensuring someone's joy. Recognizing someone else's holiness and acting in a way that supports their thriving and surviving, as if my own future depended on it. What if we lived day by day with that sense of personal stake in each other's survival and joy? What if, in a time of oppression and suffering, our task was not just to keep ourselves alive, and it wasn't just to keep other people from suffering, but what if our task was to turn towards the holiness that shows up even in its most velvety magi robe with ostentatious gifts and tender oohs and ahs, the kind of sincerity we feel when we observe a newborn's face? What if we turned toward each other like that, as if each person's night was a holy night that we were tasked to protect? Each year at my old seminary in California, there was a Methodist church that did an art installation on their lawn right next to the road. And each year they were miraculously provocative, reimagining the story of the Holy Family as a contemporary family in our world that is holy but not recognized as such. Each year the installation changed. One year it was a nativity for LGBTQ couples. The next year a nativity for those who are unhoused. There was one for families separated at our national borders. And there was one for Black Lives Matter and Trayvon Martin. What they might have been trying to do is to expand our community's sense of who is worth looking at, who is holy, and whose joy and survival we should fight to protect. Now, in an artistic way, every nativity is a way of telling you that you should pay attention. Nativity scenes are statements about where you put your attention. Everyone in a nativity scene is looking in the same direction, and they're looking with a tender face. So any nativity scene you drive by, or if you put one in your own home, is asking you a spiritual question. Who are you choosing to look at? And how are you choosing to look at them? Our investment in the survival and joy of each other is a personal and political act. It is something that begins in our own lives, the way we look at our own selves each day in the mirror. It extends ever so gently to the people we are in quarantine with, our lovers, our children, our family, our friends. And then it extends further to the people we choose to be in community with, including those who delight us and those who challenge us. And then it moves even further beyond that, an invitation based in our belief in our interdependence, that each person beyond us, that we extend our personal stake in their joy, and that all the holy ones, which I mean is everyone, is worthy of survival and joy, especially those most impacted by the systems we are all responsible for. So this leads me to my prayer for you and me and us. Something to chew on, so to speak. Join me in this spirit of intention setting. I come to myself and to my community feeling tired and hardened and numb and shaken. I am tired. I am lonely. I am worn by a world that seems full of suffering. It is hard to reckon with my part in this suffering. I sometimes collapse on myself. I sometimes lash out on those closest to me. I cannot fathom how I could possibly include one more person in the space of my heart. There is no more room at this inn. Sit with me in this feeling. I hear your fullness. The Christmas story tells us this. You do not have to do anything. You do not have to be great. You need only drop the plow in your mind and leave the sheep in your field and come. See this precious baby. Let your breath, shaken and hardened and worn, be taken away by this miracle. That despite everything, despite no room, the child within you and others needs only a little space and your loving attention to shine. And so it is with the ones you love, and so it is with the ones you love but do not know yet, that when all feels too full and the suffering feels too great, all you must do is stop. Stop what you are doing and come see this baby. And when you see her in yourself, and when you see him in the ones closest to you, and when you see all of them and the ones beyond you, and when the warmth returns to your hands, and when you think that surely this now means you must go back to the plow and to your hard work, the Christmas story tells us that there is just one more thing left to do. Sleep. For when you awake, you will begin again, and you will not do it alone.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin, mother and child. Holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight, glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing alleluia. Sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace.
As we extinguish our chalice, here is our wish for you. May you and your family cherish the wonderful memories of love, care, and hope. May you live in joy and peace. Merry Christmas and happy holidays.